So you mentioned you were coached by Cliff. Does he take care of your training as well?
So he never used to. And then I think October-ish, which was roughly a year until I was assuming we were going to start prep, I was like, I want to give you the reins on everything now. So historically, he's only ever programmed nutrition. And then if I ever had to do cardio, that was his call to make. And I've always, even with coaches, I've had one main coach prior to Cliff. And I was still like, I want to do my training. I was pretty like particular and protective of that. But I was like, look, I want to give you everything. I want you to take the reins, whatever you want to do, no matter how different it may be from what I want, maybe not how I would structure things or whatever. I trust you. You're my coach for a reason. Here you go. So since October of last year, so 6, 7, 8 months ago, he's been handling all my training. It took me a little bit of a turnaround of like, kind of like, you've got this. Like, I'll just do what you tell me to do. But it's a lot of fun now. He's got me doing a lot of shit I would never normally do, which has been fun. I think we get kind of stuck in our ways, even if we don't admit it, with even little things like certain exercises that I would historically always do, like maybe higher rep or historically do lower rep or only 2 sets versus 3, like whatever it may be. So a lot of that's been flipped on its head where, for example, he's got me doing some sets of 30, some sets that are 5, 6, 7 sets per exercise. Like it's really, really different than what I'm used to. But I think it's been a fun, like new thing for me, but also I think my body's like responded quite well to it, which is interesting. Like whether it's the newness of it or just I mean, he's hammering you with volume, which has been fun. So yeah.
Last time I spoke to Cliff, for those listening, we're talking about Cliff Wilson, just in case there's someone new listening that is unaware of that. Cliff Wilson, last time I spoke to him, he was talking very highly about this 30 rep stuff. I think maybe that was the time he was just getting into it, perhaps. So he's got you doing quite a bit of that now?
Yeah. So for example, like one session, it was lateral raises, 5 sets of 30.
How's the rest period on that?
There's some stuff that he'll note rest periods, and historically it's like they're short, right? So it might be like take 60 seconds, take 30 seconds, get back in. But rest periods, for the most part, he doesn't overly program with the main stuff that I do. But it seems to be like muscles he wants a bit more like connection with. So, for example, I struggle with my lateral delts, right? Like I just really struggle with connecting with them. So the sets of 30, by the time you're 2 and 3 sets in, 60, 90 reps deep, you're on. So then those subsequent sets you connect with better. Not that I've overly struggled with connecting on a leg extension, but when you do a set of 30, like your quads are very much aware of what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. How's like the first 20 reps of that? Because he's not like rest pause. Say you are choosing a load for a set of 30, and then by the 10th rep, you're like, holy, I'm already gassed. Do you like pause and then keep going until you hit the 30? Is that kind of how that's going?
Oh, you try to straight shot it, right? So it's not overly heavy. Like lateral raises, like I'm doing like 15s. And one thing that he's emphasized with me, especially on like a lateral raise, is like make sure you're like not swinging it, not using momentum, like consciously connect soft pause at the top, even to like let it sit. We kept calling it where it's like instead of just up and down, it's like up, little like half count, which has been great. Same with the leg extensions, like by that 17, 18, 19, like you're burning by that last like 25 to 30 reps. Like it hurts. He had me do right now he just called it high rep day. I want to say it was like 7 or 8 exercises, but all of them was like sets of 30. I remember correctly, it was lateral raises, like a bent over row, which sucks. Like high rep bent over rows is absolutely terrible. Leg extensions, hack squats, maybe something for chest. I don't remember. But 3 sets of 30 on leg extensions and then 2 sets of 20 on hack squats. That's all it was. And my quads were messed for like 3 days.
Oh, wow. You're getting pretty sore after these types of high rep, the high rep work, you're getting pretty sore?
Usually the first 1 or 2, when we like implement it, I'm pretty tender after. My body's pretty adaptive. And that's one thing I've said to him is that like, there's been times when, a back session's like 25 sets, 30 sets. And like the first 1 or 2, I'm sore. And then after that, like my body seems to be pretty adaptive. The leg stuff, like leg training, especially quad training, has really been an emphasis this off season because my adductors and my glutes, which I saw you use the thumbnail of my back double bicep in your little post there, but like my glutes are massive and my adductors are really developed. And as I've learned to train better, and we've learned biomechanics a little bit better, which is kind of a newer thing in bodybuilding the last 4 or 5 years. But for me, like I was always really stubborn with like the barbell movements. That I was just kind of grew up in that phase where squat, bench, deadlift was kind of the king. And, you know, if you didn't do those, you're soft and this and that. And I like doing them because they're hard, right? So I really love squatting super heavy, but my adductors and my glutes were always what would do the job. And even when I look back at like doing leg presses and stuff, those muscle groups were always the ones that would kind of, I got this, your quads can go, relax. And it showed in my physique. So this off season, we've really put an emphasis on like execution of like how I'm doing squats and leg presses where I'm getting like, you know, those deep bends in my knee, you know, those high rep leg extensions. You know, we've done phases of like heavy rest pauses. And that's an example of, I think I mentioned earlier, how about stuff like I would historically do higher rep or lower rep. My knees would always, they were always sore, like my patella tendon from barbell squatting. When I'm trying to just like move weight, I would dive it a little bit, right? So like that kind of harsher like knee bend in those squats. So I've taken that out, you know, a lot of pauses at the bottom, and like my knees have never felt better. Like the connective tissue with my knees, like I can hack squat now with no knee wraps or no knee sleeves. Same with leg presses, but leg extensions, I used to always do really high rep because if I did heavy weight, my knees would just scream at me. Like I could get 3 or 4 reps and my knees would just feel like they're going to shoot across the room. Now that my knees are healthy and they feel really good, and that's something he's implemented is like leg extensions, like sets of 6 to 8, like load the stack and just hard and heavy alongside, you know, high rep work here and there. And I think my quads are probably going to be one of the biggest areas that I'll notice changes just because I've trained them better and more effectively this off season.
So when did you start implementing this type of training with Cliff? How long has it been?
I would run by stuff with him and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Looking at my physique, what do you think? So prior to last season, going into my pro card, it was back. It was back. It was back. It was back. Not only my back, but like the back of my body, besides my glutes, funny enough, was like what needed the most attention, right? So we did a lot of back work, and you know, I would run my programming by him and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Like, what do you think? And he'd give me the green light or give me suggestions. Coming into this off season, it was quads, and we agreed on arms. My arms, like when I would come up into like a front and back double, just looked a little bit thin. But when I would keep them to my side, when I keep them close to my body, they looked really good. So, you know, side chest, side tricep, most muscular. I was happy with how they looked. But then when I would come out into those like arms away from me, they just looked smaller because I didn't have overdeveloped like triceps. So that's something that like he's like, okay, well, sets of 30 on press downs, you know, sets of 30 on skull crushers, like that kind of stuff. Because again, his maybe just with me, I don't know, but he was like, we need to make sure you're connecting with those muscles. So the high rep stuff, it's almost impossible. It feels when I'm doing them, they're not going to wake up, right? Where if I'm doing like a skull crusher with like, let's just use an easy bar, and I've got, you know, 120 pounds on that. Like it's easy to kind of just like muscle through it with whatever's going to do the job. Whereas if I'm doing, it's like 60 pounds, but I'm going all the way to 30, my triceps are screaming by the end of it. And that's that connection. So then when we go to, you know, the next exercise, maybe it's skull crushers for a set of 8 to 10. My triceps are like, yeah, bro, we got this. We're right there for you. The motor units are firing. There's blood in there. Everything's kind of connecting. So I think that has been quite beneficial this go around.
I think in practice, I've heard this is relatively new floating around, but all body parts respond the same with the same rep ranges. But I think in practice, that's just an epic fail for a lot of people, depending on injury history. The high rep stuff for like the push downs, like that makes sense to me because how many people I bet listening to this suffer from cranky elbows when they're doing like a heavy set of 6 to failure on like push downs or skull crushers. I think we've all heard that story from other bodybuilders or people who train like they want to compete or whatever the case is, right?
Yeah. And I think too, just like practically, when I think of like what I have at home, like I can stack my cables for like a set of 8 to 10, but I'm like hunched over, sure, lighten the weight and keep it stripped. But like even when you go heavy, like those movements when you're just less stable, like there's more room for other stuff to get involved. My shoulders can be like, no, we'll help out a little bit, or like you get that little bit of body English in there. And you know, the older I've gotten and the longer I've done this, it's like, okay, how do I just train better? You know, I used to be so addicted to more weight, more weight, more weight, more weight. Even like that last off season, right? Like I got up to like deadlifting 600 and squatting 500 and benching like 350 and pressing 120-pound dumbbells. And like, did it work? Like, probably to a degree, but now I'm like, okay, that stuff hurts me now. It just beats my body up more than necessary. And I don't think I need to overly emphasize like that constant chase of more weight, more weight, more weight. Now it's like, how can I do it better, better, better?
Right. And more weight within the rep range that you're working with, which is going to be arguably and more practically better for your connective tissue, your joints, right? Which is what you've experienced firsthand.
Oh yeah, like I kid you not, this is probably the best my body's felt in my entire training career, and this is the oldest I've ever been. It's all I think we all go through it, right? Like we're all going through that like early 20s meathead where it's just like I just want to be strong as hell and whatever it takes to get there. And yeah, my knees kill me after leg day for 3 days, but like whatever, I squatted 455 for six. Like that's the attitude. But now I'm like, I'm a dad, dude. Like I want to be able to like I want to come out of the gym feeling good, not like crippled.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And if you can get arguably the same result, if not potentially a better result from
Oh
a
yeah,
growth
that's
standpoint.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So like why wouldn't you do that? But that requires, like you said, it requires surrendering your ego because obviously as someone who's been in this, like chasing the load is definitely something if you're listening, I'm sure you've experienced, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it does. It looks good on social media, right? And you know, you love to show your buddies like the video of you deadlifting all the weight in the gym. But like, I'll post that set of 30 with lateral raises, and no one gives a shit. But ideally, the delts look better on show day.
Your body's happier for it too. So
Yeah,
yeah, you think people care, but it's an impression for maybe a few seconds, and then they're moving on to the next person to get their hit of dopamine, right? So
you gotta let that go.
you let that go and do what's best for your body, right? What's going to be better for you long term, right? That's the most important thing here because you want to be natural bodybuilding up until your 50s and 60s, not just thinking short term with this ego chasing, this wanting to just lift more in the sub 5 rep range. I feel like that only takes you so far for so long, right?
And even like the last couple of years, probably the last like year or two, this pec has been every once in a while it'll remind me it's not perfect. So there's been
Mm.
two instances in the last again maybe 18 months that I've like really pulled it. Benching, flat bench, flat bench. If this is kind of like the tendon right here, I felt it go like this at twice, and I would have loved to hit 405, but I don't know if it's in the cards for me in my training career. But the old me would have tried to, you know, just take a week off and go back in. And now I'm just like, no. If anything hurts, like I'm not risking it because I don't want surgery. I don't want to,
Oh,
you know, tear my pec off. And obviously, from a physique standpoint, that might look a little different, which we don't want. And from a health standpoint, I don't want that. I can't remember where I heard it or who said it. I feel like Berto may have said it at one point, but it was one rep won't make your career, but one rep can break your career.
yeah, he did say that. Yeah, shout out to Berto. That's a good line because it's very true. And shout out to Marshall Johnson, man. I say this almost in every other episode, but it's like train to train another day, man. Like if you're just thinking about today's work, like as if it's like the last workout you're ever going to do, there's going to be problems potentially, right? Like you got to know where to channel that energy, is what I'm saying. And load and trying to hit PRs every workout within that rep range that we're talking about, this like 1 to 5 or whatnot, it's not going to be the way, I think, from a longevity standpoint, doing that over and over and over again with no proper adjustments along the way. Like you said, if you were stubborn and you went and you did that 4 or 5 bench just because you wanted it, how's that going to go? Better
Oh
not to
yeah,
find out.
no, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll let that one go to rest.
Yeah. Let's rest that one. So let's talk about how you're running things now. Like, I'm sure the listeners are curious. I'm curious. With your training, you mentioned obviously the rep ranges. How's the frequency looking now? Like obviously you have your child, newborn. How is that affected the frequency of your training?
So thankfully, the home gym has been a godsend, right? For those that don't know, I've got a pretty decked out home gym. It's got everything I need. It's more than enough. I haven't regularly used a public gym since 2020. The odd time I'll go with friends or if we're out of town, obviously. But as far as like consistently training, it's just at home in my garage. So, you know, obviously the first couple of days after he was born and we kind of getting home and settled in was no training. And the first 2 weeks was like I'll hop in when I can. They're quick sessions. Like, thankfully, my wife's mom stayed with us for the first week, which was very helpful just to like obviously adapt and learn this entirely new way of living and taking care of our son. But, the first like 2 weeks was super, just whatever I can do. It might be just a full upper body, it might be a full lower body here and there. Once we got that under our belts, like I was pretty much back to training my full 5 days a week, like within the first 3 to 4 weeks, I would say, after he was born. Still like adaptive to volume and stuff. Just I'm intuitive on like how long sometimes I've got in the gym based on how he's feeling and how my wife's feeling. Like if it's, if he's having a good morning and, we feed him, he's just chilling, then, I can get in there and probably take my time. But if he's being a fuss and I want to make sure I'm there to help out, then I'll get in there and maybe it's not 3 sets, it's 2 sets, or maybe if it's an arm day, I'm going to superset everything, bicep and tricep to condense it. Like I'm very adaptive with that now. But I would say now at like 3 months, my training is back to what it always would have been.
Nice, nice. Have you spoken to anybody about that transition? Like I know Berto obviously also just had a baby. So have you talked to a few guys to see how it would affect you and get some tips? Or is this more like you just did it all on your own?
No, so funny you mentioned Berto. So him and his partner Cynthia, my wife Carrie, talks to her quite regularly, and the odd time Berto and I would kind of bounce back and forth a little bit. So that was helpful. I think their child's 6 months, so they had 3 months by the time we had ours. So be like, hey, like, how'd you do this, or what do you suggest here and there? James, who I do the podcast with, he's got 2 as well, so he was helpful to just kind of chat with a little bit to help navigate things, and obviously family and stuff. But there was a few people that I was able to at least vent with and navigate and take suggestions from and stuff like that. My wife and I look at each other and be like, man, like how is this 3 months already? Like it doesn't make sense that by so fast. And even with prep, right? Like I'm thinking, man, like I come off stage in 2022 and like 2025, like 3 years from now, that feels like that could be tomorrow. People ask all the time, like what's changed with having a baby, and it's my perspective on time. It just feels like it's a lot faster than it ever felt before.
So let's talk about the training some more. So you mentioned 5 days a week. Is that naturally what you respond well to from a frequency standpoint? You feel like you can get everything in that you need to get in? Are you arranging that in a specific way where you found it most beneficial from just how you respond, like growth standpoint, etc.?
Yeah, 5 days has always been what I've gravitated towards. I've tried implementing a 6 day, but I find not only schedule wise, like I'm just between shows and family and stuff on weekends and traveling and doing stuff with my wife and now with the little guy, like a 6th day it's a waste. Like there's no point. And I find just I quickly get burnt out from it. Like I like that additional rest day. I train in the mornings. Maybe people don't know this. I train fasted, and I've trained fasted for the last probably 5 or 6 years, to be honest. I get up, drink a bunch of water, walk the dog, pre-workout, gym.
Wow. So what time is that usually?
Now with the little dude, I'm usually like 5:30. Before him, I would say sleep till 6, maybe in the gym at 6:30. It's a vibe too, like when the sun's coming up and shining through the garage. Like, or I love my favorite, man, is when it's raining and it's just like this like calm, serene. Because I'm out in the country a little bit too, so it's super quiet. And like if you just like crack the garage door open and you just hear the rain, it's some movie shit. It's cinematic for sure.
I love that, man. I could just picture it in the outskirts of Ontario. Just, man, I miss it, man. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's really good.
I love that. So you train, you said like 5:30 sometimes. That's generally the time though, 5:30 a.m.
Yeah, so right now, like little guy's usually waking up around 4. I'll feed him more often than not. By the time he's done feeding, like he's pretty much fallen back asleep. So I'll sit with him on the couch for a little bit, and then like try to like slowly like cart him back into his bassinet. If it's around that time, then I'll just stay up. If he's up at 4, we feed him. 4:30, 4 to 5, I put him back down. I'm just gonna stay up and get the day going. The odd time it's earlier than that, and I'll maybe try to shut my eyes again for another hour or so. But I'm a morning person. Like once I get up, obviously that first like 10, 15 minutes, you're like, okay, let's do this. But once I'm up and around and kind of get the day going, I'm all right. I would sooner get it done. And now I hate, hate, hate training later in the day. Hate it.
Wow. And later in the day for you is probably like afternoon or something like that, right?
Oh man, if buddies want to train like on a weekend, they're like, yeah, can we like hit the gym at like 1? I'm like, no, I don't want to. I like to get it done, man. Like I like it being done. And then the rest of the day is just like, okay, whether it's work, family, whatever, you've got my focus. If it's this looming, like it's so weird, but if it's like this looming, I need to go to the gym, then that's all I'm thinking about. I'm just watching the clock because I'm like, because I don't eat, right? So now I'm like, okay, when do I want to eat and how much? Because I don't want to feel like now when I eat, sometimes I feel like bogged down from it, even if it's like really light. And I'm also very sensitive. So I love pre-workout, but that's it's the only stimulant in my life. I don't smoke, I don't drink, no coffee, no energy drinks, nothing. But I love my pre-workout, but I'm very sensitive to caffeine. So even if I have any semblance of caffeine in my system from like 12 o'clock onwards, I will have sleep issues. I hate training later in the day because then I can't enjoy my pre-workout. It's not that I'm wired at night. I just can't sleep. Like I'll just be like laying in bed, like staring at the ceiling at like midnight.
What time are you in bed by?
I would say like right now I'm dozing off with him in my arms on the couch at 9.
Okay. You're getting a decent amount of sleep, like 7 hours.
Yeah, like even if he's, let's say like worst case scenario, I'm falling asleep at 10, he wakes up at 4, like I'm still getting like a decent 6 hours, which for me is like functional. The rare occasion that I would even try to get more than that, just because I don't start my like day job till 10. Even if I was, want to do a hour and a half workout, like even if I pushed it to like 7, I got lots of time. But I like to get up, and Carrie would come out with me when she was, because she would work in the mornings too, right? So she'd come out with me, or we'd get up and walk the dog and stuff like that. So
Oh, so that's first before the workout.
yeah, yeah. So morning, I'll run you through the whole thing. Okay, so baby cries, time to get up. Look at the clock. Ideally, it's like 4:30. Get him, change him, I fill a shaker cup, I chug it, get myself hydrated. Take him, get the bottle warmed up, couch, feed him. He falls asleep maybe 10, 15 minutes later, and then put him down. Then I'll fill this again with my pre workout. I'll go nudge the dog, who is not awake at that time, but I like company when I go for my walk. So I drag him out of bed too. He shakes it off, gets up. Then we go for a walk around the block. It's super nice, man. Sun's coming up, peaceful as hell. So that's probably like a 15-minute job or so. Finish my pre workout and then I'm in the gym.
Okay. So literally just pre-workout. Man, how long did it take you to get used to this? How long you been doing this for?
Years.
When you first started doing it, was it tricky? Like, did you take some time to get used to? Do you remember?
I don't remember, man, because
Ah.
like I've done it for so long. I used to like in the off season last time. I used to try to eat before, even just some carbs, because I said to Cliff, I was like, "Do you want me to try to get something in me? Because like I'm training in the mornings, like that's a non-negotiable. If I need to get up and eat like a meal, like I got to get up earlier than necessary." And we both agreed that the sleep would be more beneficial than the food I would eat beforehand. And I just feel shitty. So we tried to do like even like a shake and like a Rice Krispie square or a protein shake and like a small handful of like dried fruit just to get it in me. And I'd rather not. So then up until recently, I would have carbs during my workout. I would just do like Gatorade powder for some quick carbs. But then he cut my calories down, and I was like, well, screw it. I'm not doing that Gatorade. I'd rather eat later in the day. I do like 10 grams of EAAs during my workout, and that's all I run off. But my calories were higher. I would at least do Gatorade with some EAAs in my system. Like I would sip on that during the workout, but beforehand, like I run off water and pre.
So ideally, you would sip on it though. You wouldn't just chug it right before.
Yeah, the Gatorade I kind of nursed throughout the workout.
Nice, nice. So that's cool. That might be helpful for someone listening who has like this hectic schedule and they've always been intrigued about training fasted, but they were afraid they're going to lose all their gains because that's like a thing, right? That people are worried about. I feel like with the fasted training, and I don't think they should be because, well, I don't think there's any evidence to support that. That's one thing, but also you go off how you feel too. Like you can kind of tell if how you're responding, is your performance up? I think that's the biggest thing, right? Like if you're able to progress with your training and you do this fasted thing, there's literally no evidence to support that because your performance is up, you're feeling good. You are the experiment. There it is. You're the
Yeah,
experiment, and you got to
I've
run that.
totally let all that stuff go because I think that was a fear for anybody trying to build muscle. I was like, well, if I don't have protein or if I train fasted, like I'm immediately catabolic and this, that. And like let me be the evidence that that's not true, at least in my situation. And the only thing that I do in preparation for this is my last meal of the day is typically my biggest. So I probably do between like, right now, like 60 to 80 grams of carbs in that last meal, which is still probably floating in my system in the overnight into the morning. So that's the only thing that I try to be conscious of is backloading that fuel for the night to then, I like, giving that flexibility with like what we're gonna have for dinner and stuff. But I think it might have a hand in how I feel in the mornings. If I was waking up with like hunger pains, maybe that would be not only maybe performance wise, but I think mentally that might be you're like so hungry, like I just need to eat and then I can go train. But I wake up like I'm ready to go.
I think that's a good sign too. Like if you're someone who's naturally not hungry first thing in the morning, I mean, maybe you can do the fasted training thing. Also, I remember Cliff saying this in our podcast, our interview together. He was saying that if you are going to do the fasted training thing, the protein dose right after training becomes way more important than if you had a meal right before, right? Like in terms of the timing of it. Is that accurate to say? Does he have you keeping an eye on?
Immediately post workout, I crush a shake and then I'll have like a meal like an hour later.
Right, right. You're also sipping on those EAAs during, which is beneficial, right? Like those are amino acids, essential amino acids for those who may not know who are tuning in. You're also getting that dose during the training, which is kind of, well, which is cool, beneficial, and important, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. So last thing for this, for the YouTube, right? Because they love this question. But the split, just outline that real quick. The training split.
Great. I literally just started a new thing he sent me this week, so I don't have it memorized yet.
Oh, okay. So this is new. This is your current training program that you're about to run.
So chest and delts, back, traps, and abs, legs, arms, high rep day. So
The high rep day is just like, what is that? Like a full body kind of thing?
yeah, muscle groups that need some love. So it's delts, a little bit of delts, a little bit of quads, some back, some triceps.
Is that Monday through Friday that you run that?
Legs I always do Sunday. Anybody that follows me knows I like to make all my friends puke on Sundays. So legs is Sunday. Typically Monday would be a rest day. Then chest and delts, back, traps, abs. I would rest. So I typically would rest like Monday, Thursday. I am very, again, right now, like just with baby life and dad life and husband and business life, like I'm super adaptive. Like if the week calls for it, like this week, because I've been gone for a show all weekend, I trained Monday to Friday straight. I want to get my sessions in. I don't want to miss anything. So like yesterday and today, I haven't been able to train. So then next week will obviously be a nicer schedule. Never mind. I got 4 show weekends in a row. So it's a bit of a dogfight for the next month.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, bro, obviously it's Sunday, so it's leg day, right?
Yeah, I got a 3.5 hour drive home. Gotta get home to the fam. So we'll see. I'm willing to bet I won't be able to twist her arm into let me go train for a couple hours today since I've been gone all weekend. So I think I'll go home and be a dad for the rest of the day.
Nice, man. Good call. I think a lot of people can respect that call.